Everybody, welcome. You're hanging out with Ben. This is the Hardcore Punk Project here on the X, 92.5 FM in Kamloops. Today we have Dread Sovereign. Dread Sovereign was formed in Dublin in 2013 by primordial vocalist Nemtheanga to give praise to filthy cult, old doom, black, and heavy metal. Their first EP, 2013's Prayer to the Devil and Man. Soon after, two full-lengths were released, All Hell's Martyrs and For Doom the Bell Tolls. And on January 15th, Dread Sovereign will release their third full-length album, called Alchemical Warfare, via Metal Blade Records. Today we have Alan, so thanks for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. So, first off, you okay with the teen interviewing you?
I needed some persuading, but apparently you have some pedigree, so I agreed to do it. Yes, it's fine.
All right. Okay, so you're the first Irish band that I've done so far. I've done two Aussie and one French and one German band.
Okay.
When I think of Ireland, I picture leprechauns and four-leaf clovers and potatoes, not doom metal. So,
well, yeah, a shamrock is 3 leaves, isn't it? But yeah, it's well, you know, don't forget Ireland has a kind of 70s hard rock history, whether it's Thin Lizzy, Van Morrison, Rory Gallagher, you know, people like that, and of course 80s stuff like U2. We don't have a very long history with known heavy metal bands. There wasn't many in the 80s, but there's a whole scene of bands and people who began in the early 90s, Primordial, Morning Beloved, Cruachan, etc. But yeah, you know, Ireland is a small country, and so most people think of, I guess, St. Patrick's Day and Guinness and stuff. And once upon a time, they thought about terrorism as well, but you know, those days are over.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the eye-opener.
Okay.
I actually had a cousin from Ireland visit us. He couldn't get over how big Canada is. Have you been to Canada yet?
Yeah. No, I played there 7 or 8 times, maybe, different cities, Montreal, Toronto, and then over to Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver. It's a few years ago now. And we've tried to come back several times. But yeah, I mean, you know, Ireland you can drive from one end of Ireland in probably 5 or 6 hours. So, you know, the distances between Montreal and Calgary and Edmonton and stuff like this are massive. So yeah, it's when you come from a small country, it can be a little bit overwhelming when you first arrive, when something is that massive.
Mm-hmm. Where have you toured so far?
Oh, well, I guess my first gigs abroad or outside of Ireland were maybe in 1994 in the UK. And then by 97, 98, we were playing, this is with Primordial now, not Dread Sovereign. We were playing, you know, European mainland gigs, Holland, Germany, Belgium, France. And then pretty much consistently since then, every year, we've been back and forwards to Europe, you know, Russia, Australia, a lot of Eastern Europe, a lot of Balkan countries. We've been to South America, you know, so most places, not enough, if you ask me. There's still some left to do. But I've been consistently playing, I guess, 20 to 60 gigs a year for almost 30 years. No, well, let's say 25 years. So.
Nice. Okay. Who would you like to tour with in the future?
Well, I mean, that supposes if we're able to, considering the strange circumstances that the world is in right now. Hopefully we can get back to touring next year. To be honest, I don't really have a bucket list of bands to tour with. I've been lucky and always toured with cool people, easy to get along with. I don't have many horror stories of difficult bands. Most people in this sort of genre, at this sort of level, are, you know, they've come through the same underground as we would have done, and so I don't really have any stories of terrible people I've toured with. So to be honest with you, just somebody or just a band of easygoing, cool, relaxed people generally fits us fine. You know, Irish people are
Yes.
quite, sort of easygoing.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your band? Like, when were you formed, etc.? That kind of stuff.
Well, Dread Sovereign was formed about maybe 8 years ago. The difference between Dread Sovereign and Primordial is that I played the bass in Dread Sovereign and sing. In Primordial, I just sing. And so we had maybe 6 or 9 months off, and I had a lot of riffs on the guitar. And I thought, well, I'd like to do this other band. And so me and the guy Bones on guitar, we started it with the drummer of Primordial back on the first album. Then we changed our drummer. And so it's about 8 years that we started doing this thing. And this is the third album, and I guess we have an EP as well. So it's nearly 10 years. Nearly 10 years we've been at it. I'm always very busy. I'm doing a couple of different projects at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Right. What inspires you to write the songs you do? Don't say Satan.
Don't say Satan. Okay. Well, Dread Sovereign is a little bit different than Primordial. Primordial is quite serious, I suppose. It's got a sort of, the themes of Primordial are historical, cultural, a little bit more weighty. Dread Sovereign still has some of the same things, but it's written, I suppose, in the old language of heavy metal, hard rock. It's got a bit more devil may care spirit to it. And so on the first album, we wrote about, I suppose, the Cathar rebellion in the 13th century in France, the Knights Templar. The new album, the cover has Isaac Newton on it. So I take historical people and places and write about them in a sort of, I suppose, horror, dark kind of way,
Right.
with a little bit of, devil may care.
All right.
Okay.
The new single already out, Nature is the Devil's Church. I thought it would be doomy due to the start, but then it turned into kind of the 1980s banger track, like you said.
Yeah.
I like it.
Cool.
All right. So what's the song about?
What's the song about? Well, the idea is, I suppose, that if you look on the cover of the album, you see Isaac Newton, and the three people in the background, his laboratory assistants, are the three people in the band. And I'm very interested in the concept of alchemy in sort of European history from 15th to 18th century, all the old hermetical occult orders. And so I wrote this sort of slightly fantastical lyric about the quest for the philosopher's stone, and sort of draped it in this sort of occult Edgar Allan Poe sort of 1970s The Omen style horror lyric. It's traditional heavy metal, so it's not meant to be, I don't know, to give you your geopolitical cue for life or something from this. So it's written in the spirit of Venom and Motorhead, and as you said, 80s heavy metal.
Mm-hmm. Right. So now I quote you: "The world is doomed, and it seems life is imitating art, as we are looking like filthy prophets. Several years in making, the new Dread Sovereign is ready for the end of the world, which might be next year, in case you didn't know."
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope not, because they said COVID's going to get worse by next year.
Well, there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in my statement, a little bit of gallows humor or black humor. I tend to lean into having a little bit of fun with those press statements. But the mission statement of Dread Sovereign is this sort of like, as I said, devil may care recklessness, all mixed with this sort of live fast, die middle-aged sort of idea behind it. But no, it's who knows? Maybe it's all going to end next year. I don't know, but I hope not. I think you're right. But there's a bit of tongue in cheek in the press statement, you know, because otherwise I would be there going, well, the new album is, you know, boring, sort of pitter patter. So I decided to make it a bit, you know, a little bit blackly humorous, I guess.
All right. So, are you able to see the future? Tell us.
Am I able to see the future? Tell you, well, the future, the next few years is going to be a bumpy ride, I think. It's going to be a bit complicated. People are going to need to strap themselves in and be prepared for, I think, some rather difficult obstacles. But, you know, Dread Sovereign isn't really my, let's say, political place of opinion. It's not my pulpit to preach from. So the future, well, I mean, the future that we, you know, in metal and rock and punk rock and all this hope for is that people are able to get back to making art, to touring, to playing live, to playing festivals. I mean, think how terrible it would be if you never got to go and see some of these bands when you in a couple of years, you know. And that is not a question that's too far removed from reality. So yeah, I think people just want to get back to playing live and touring.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us, is disco really dead? And did you have anything to do with its demise?
I think when disco died, I was about 3 or 4. So probably not, unless I was just some sort of terrible omen as a child, which spelled the doom of disco. Is disco really dead? I don't know. That's a complicated question. You probably should have asked somebody who was my age in 1977, but you know.
All right. I quote the Canadian punk band DOA from that year. Disco sucks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, DOA is a great band. Yeah.
Okay. Have you guys done any Christmas covers?
No, we're not really that kind of band. We won't be making any Christmas merch or any, you know, Christmas posts on Instagram or anything like that. That's not really the Irish style, I think, or our style. So no Christmas jumpers, no Christmas singles.
Right. The first venue you played, where was it?
Wow, that's an interesting question. The very first gig I ever played was in my old secondary school. With, I think I was in second year, so 1989. I think I was 14, maybe a year older than you are, and I played the bass. Well, I didn't really play it; I just held it. And me and my friend played. Two friends tried to play Venom, GBH, and Dead Kennedys covers and Ramones covers in the school at lunchtime. And it wasn't really a gig, but kind of a gig. The first ever, I suppose, proper gig I played was in 1991 in a amateur dramatics kind of hall or sort of youth hall in a suburb of Dublin called Skerries with Primordial, and that was August 1991. So yeah, those are the first two, I think.
All right. What's your favorite venue to play?
Well, to be honest with you, I kind of like everything as long as there's some people in it. I've played gigs where I've played on the floor, you know, of a pub in front of 50 people, and it's been some of the best gigs I've ever played. And I've also stood on a stage and sang to 25,000 people. And either or. I personally like smaller places, you know, a few hundred people where you can really get right up close to people, and have some kind of feeling, you know, kind of that sort of underground communal feeling. But both are fine with me. I'm perfectly at home on the big stage, projecting, and also playing the bass in a tiny bar. So it's as long as there's some people there, and as long as it happens, it's okay with me.
All right. What's the weirdest or funniest thing you have ever done while performing?
Wow. Weirdest. I've done lots of things like jumping into the crowd to fight with people, hitting people with things, breaking things. Back years ago,
Mhm.
climbing off the stage onto balconies, or getting into the crowd, throwing people out while we played. Weirdest, or what was the other word? Funniest thing.
Yeah.
Funny we don't really funny, but for sure there's been, curious moments where, I guess funny between us in the band moments where, you're playing on a huge stage and you realize, you've bent over to pick something and split your fucking pants open or something, or you've made some silly mistake, or I don't know, it's hard to say. Lots of maybe in my youth, lots of jumping into the crowd and flinging things around and flinging people around.
Right.
I suppose that's an answer. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever get to Kamloops, we have a bar here called the Blue Grotto for touring bands, and I think Kamloops would enjoy seeing Dread Sovereign one day.
Oh, hopefully. Once all this stuff moves along and calms down, maybe it's something we can do.
Has any one of your fans got out of hand, shall we say, while you performed?
Yeah, of course. It's over all the years and all the years of playing, I think most people who've stood on a stage have had somebody throw things at them, or spit at them, or people who don't want you to be there. And there's been times where you've had to get into the crowd and separate people if it's looked a bit dangerous, especially sometimes if you're playing in like somewhere rural in Eastern Europe or something. Sometimes, let's say, barriers and stages aren't the most safe. We played in America a few years ago, down in the south of America, and someone got shot outside the gig. People can get very emotional. People can, have all sorts of experiences when you play.
Yeah, I believe it. Bad stuff has happened to other bands before.
Yeah, it happens to everybody, I think, who stands on a stage somewhere.
Yeah. Where do you most often get inspired to write your songs?
Well, for Dread Sovereign, it will be something a bit more simplistic because I'm not a great guitar player, but I'm writing riffs, and so it will be, I have to make myself play the guitar to see what comes out, and then I start by recording on my phone. Then I start recording a little bit on GarageBand maybe, or thinking about the riffs and the lyrics and piecing them together in my head. Sometimes I'll be sitting on a train or a bus, and I hear the key of the notes. So I'll be thinking, thinking of the strings, C, A, D, whatever, and I think of the numbers, 7, 11, 10, the frets, and sometimes I write riffs and write them down on my phone like that, which is, I suppose, is a little bit strange. But Primordial is a bit different. Primordial is a kind of 5 of us together in the room. I mean, it's always together in the room, in the rehearsal room. Heavy metal, I think, needs to be written in a room with other human beings, not on files traded. So it's hard to answer. You never know. Sometimes you just feel the need, like maybe in the 2 hours I pick up the guitar and go, oh, there's a song comes out. Who knows?
Yeah. And I also agree with the part that heavy metal needs to be recorded together.
It's true. It's true. It needs humanity.
Yeah. So my last question, as always, is, will you accept a challenge from me? So will you accept a challenge from me?
I suppose I don't really have a choice, do I? So let's go.
Okay, I'll explain more after, but the challenge is a music video, a cover of A Spoonful of Sugar by Julie Andrews from the Mary Poppins musical, doom metal style.
Wow. Are we talking about The Sound of Music? Is that the...
No, I said A Spoonful of Sugar by Julie Andrews.
Okay.
From Mary Poppins.
A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Okay, and so what's the challenge is to make that into a doom metal cover? Wow.
Yes, in your style.
Okay. I'd have to pass on the challenge to our guitar player. I'm sure he could probably
Yes,
arrange it for you.
of course. Give it to
Um,
Bones.
Give it to Bones. Yeah, he's younger than me. He's more enthusiastic about this kind of thing, and he would probably find that amusing to do. It's not the challenge. I think yeah, it was a little bit out of left field. I'm not sure if I've ever even seen that musical. What is it? 1960 or 1958, 6 or something.
Wow.
Well, that's quite the challenge. Okay, I will have to. I'll have to get back to you on that specific challenge.
I mean, there was a sequel called Mary Poppins Returns released in 2019, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it could have come from.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Okay, so we're running out of time here. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the tracks from Alchemical Warfare out on January 15th.
Yeah, you'll see another video, I think in a week. We have the second single, and that's, I can't remember the name of the song, but yeah, that'll be a similar kind of video that'll come out in about a week. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got a little portable song list right here.
Okay, right. That's a very good point. I think it's called, I don't know. We'll see. I can't remember.
Yep. That's okay. I don't remember stuff sometimes, but I'd like to thank you, Alan or Nemtheanga, for joining me here on the X.
No problem. No problem.
All right, stay safe and be well.
We will try, and you too. All right.
Bye.
Take it easy.